Well, working from home means millions of Canadians are trading in the commute for longer hours logged on. So our next story could be good news to many. Ontario is proposing new legislation that would push employers to make sure workers have the right to disconnect. And for more, we're joined by Labour lawyer Alex Lucifero. Thanks for your time this morning.
Good morning, Anne-Marie.
All right, how is this legislation going to help employees?
Well, it's going to solidify the fact that, since the pandemic, the lines have been blurred between work and home, at least for a lot of employees that have been working from home, working remotely. And I think this is going to solidify the fact that once work is done, an employer will not be allowed to communicate with employees, whether it's by telephone call or email or text message perhaps, and allow those employees the actual time off that they need and deserve, and effectively a break from work, which some employees don't have.
France, among other European countries, has a right to disconnect law. How has it worked there?
Well, Europe is quite different. I think a number of countries have these kinds of laws in Europe, not only France. And I think generally speaking, the balance of power between employees and employers is a little bit more proportionate in those European countries. And this is, the right to disconnect is one of those examples, along with perhaps more vacation time, greater union representation. And so, again, I think this teeters the balance of power back towards employees, at least just a little bit, along with some of the other pieces of legislation, the other provisions that this provincial government has introduced.
I'm going to remind our viewers of a stat. We've done a segment on this because the statistic is alarming. A global study by the World Health Organization shows burnout can be deadly, and it found that people who worked more than 55 hours a week had a 35% higher risk of stroke and a 17% higher risk of heart disease compared to those who worked a 35 to 40 hours a week. So do you think we'll see other provinces put forward similar legislation?
Interesting statistics. I do think so, Anne-Marie. There is no such law at the moment in Canada. Across all of the provinces, there's no right to disconnect law yet. Ontario is going to be the first province to introduce such legislation. And I do think that once that first domino falls, other provinces will join ranks. Of course, the devil is always in the details. So we'll have to have a close look at the legislation and see exactly what it requires of employers and what it requires of employees, for that matter, as well.
Yeah, and employees, as we know, may have the right, but how will that be enforced? How will it be reprimanded if it's not followed by employers?
Exactly. What are the enforcement options that employees have? Again, are there certain exceptions for particular industries? I know of one exception already, which is this will apply to employers with 25 employees or more. And so right off the bat, small businesses are excluded from this right to disconnect law. And I think there are a couple of reasons why that might be. But again, the devil will be in the details, and we'll have to have a closer look once the legislation is introduced.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion, especially as you point out during these times of the pandemic when people were working from home and their hours, their commute got shorter, but their hours at the computer got longer. Interesting discussion. Thank you, Alex.